Welcome to Walking the Haftarah. I'm Tyler Merwin, and this is Torah portion, Chukat. This week's Torah portion is Numbers 19:1 through 22:1, and our Haftarah this week is Judges 11:1 through 33. Chukat means ordinance, as in the opening line of our Torah portion it reads, Now Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh spoke to Moses and to Aaron, saying, This is the statute, or Chukat, of the law that Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh has commanded. Tell the people of Israel to bring you a red heifer without defect, in which there is no blemish, and on which no yoke has ever come. Numbers 19:1 and 2. This week's Torah portion will be part one of a double portion when read in non-leap years, read with Torah portion Balach. Torah portion this week will cover the red heifer, the death of Miriam, Moses striking a rock, the death of Aaron, fiery serpents, and the victory over Sihon and Og. Our Haftarah this week is back in the book of Judges and the story of the judge Yiftach, or Jephthah. So let's begin with a review of our Torah portion this week. This week's portion is titled Chukat. Chukat is from the root word huk, which is usually translated as ordinance, statute, or decree. Remember that these are the commandments that we are given without a thorough explanation as to why. They're the daddy said so kind of commandments. The statute of the red heifer, or red cow, is considered the quintessential chukat in the Torah by the Torah scholars throughout the centuries. This statute was actually given to Moses and Aaron at Mount Sinai during their time there, well before most of the events that we've been reading about these past few weeks have occurred. So, what makes this specific statute so puzzling? Well, let's take a look at the basic steps. Like all sacrifices, the animal had to be without defect, so no issue there. The cow could have never been worked, never been yoked, as the scripture says. This is a little bit different, but not too far off from the other offerings. And you shall give it to Eleazar the priest, and it shall be taken outside the camp and slaughtered before him. Numbers 19:3. Now this is the only sacrifice that is sacrificed outside the camp instead of at the tabernacle or the temple. And the heifer shall be burned in his sight. Its skin, its flesh, and its blood, with its dung, shall be burned. And the priest shall take cedar wood and hyssop and scarlet yarn and throw them into the fire, burning the heifer. Numbers 19:5 and 6. The olah offering, or burnt offering, is also completely burned up, but is first prepared by removing the blood, removing certain organs, washing the entrails, and then placing it all back on the altar to be burned up. Here, nothing is prepared. The entire animal is actually burned up intact. Some offerings also have a portion taken outside the camp and burned, but this is the only one that's actually slaughtered and wholly burned up outside of the camp. And you'll remember the connection we made back a few weeks ago with the cedar wood, the hyssop, and the scarlet yarn that mirrors the process for cleansing someone with sa'arat, or leprosy. Then the priest shall wash his clothes and bathe his body in water, and afterward he may come into the camp. But the priest shall be unclean until evening. The one who burns the heifer shall wash his clothes in water and bathe his body in water, and shall be unclean until evening. Numbers 19:7 and 8. This is the part that's most puzzling to the sages. The priesthood does many sacrifices every day, but none of them put the priest in an actually unclean status. But offering the red heifer actually does. The ashes of the red heifer are mixed with water to make the water for impurity, and the waters used to remove the contamination of human death. Whoever touches the dead body of any person shall be unclean 7 days. He shall cleanse himself with the water on the 3rd day and on the 7th day, and so be clean. But if he does not cleanse himself on the 3rd day and on the 7th day, he will not become clean. Numbers 19:11 and 12. Our text goes on to lay out how the uncleanness of death can contaminate a person even beyond physically touching a dead body. Remember that death is the antithesis of Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, who is life. That's why this procedure is so important. Failure to complete this process is to be spiritually cut off from the congregation, Adonai's people. The one who sprinkles the water for impurity shall wash his clothes, and the one who touches the water for impurity shall be unclean until evening. Numbers 19:21. So, not only are the ones who prepare the sacrifice and handle the ashes rendered unclean until evening, even the one who sprinkles the water on the person who contacted death is rendered unclean until evening. The one being sprinkled on the third and seventh day are being made clean. But the clean one who is sprinkling the water of impurity is made unclean in the process. Again, this transfer of uncleanness is the main point of the confusion. But we have the key to understanding this, and it is, of course, Yeshua. Yeshua's sacrifice cleansed us from our sin, which has the penalty of death, because he took our sin upon himself. He made him who knew no sin to be sin on our behalf, so that we might become the righteousness of Elohim in him. 2 Corinthians 5:21. The one who cleansed us took our uncleanness upon himself. This is a fascinating study. Every piece of the process points to Yeshua's work on the torture stake. And you can find all the details regarding this in the Walking the Torah Portions episode on this week's Torah portion. As we begin chapter 20, we literally jump ahead in time approximately 38 years to the last year of the wilderness wandering. And the people of Israel, the whole congregation, came into the wilderness of Zin in the first month, and the people stayed at Kadesh. And Miriam died there and was buried there. Numbers 20, verse 1. We are told it was in the first month, and we know that Pesach, or Passover, is celebrated in the first month of the year. Then, 1 year from our current text, we read in Joshua, just before they conquered Jericho, the beginning phase of conquering the Promised Land, that while the people of Israel were encamped at Gilgal, they kept the Passover on the 14th day of the month in the evening on the plains of Jericho. Joshua 5:10. So from here in the Torah, Numbers 20, through the end of the Torah and into chapter 5 of Joshua, contains the final year of Israel's wilderness journey. And the first event we are told of is the death of Miriam. At the same time, they're also in a water shortage. The people quarreled with Moses about the lack of water in their typical stiff-necked fashion. Moses and Aaron are told by Adonai to bring Moses' staff and to speak to the rock in the presence of the people, and it will bring forth water. Moses, being angered by the people and their complaining, and just having lost his sister Miriam, strikes the rock twice instead of speaking to it as he was commanded. But the rock gushed forth water anyway. And Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh said to Moses and Aaron, "Because you did not believe in me, to uphold me as holy in the eyes of the people of Israel, therefore you shall not bring this assembly into the land that I have given them." Numbers 20, verse 12. Because of this act, Moses and Aaron are barred from entering the Promised Land. Next they approach the land of Edom, and they ask the king of Edom for passage through the land, as it would save a lot of time and a lot of distance for them. Edom refuses with a force of arms, and Israel is forced to travel around the land of Edom. And Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh said to Moses and to Aaron at Mount Hor, on the border of the land of Edom, "Let Aaron be gathered to his people, for he shall not enter the land that I have given to the people of Israel, because you rebelled against my command at the waters of Meribah." Numbers 20, 23, and 24. Aaron's son Eleazar is brought up to Mount Hor with Aaron, and the high priest's garments are removed from Aaron and placed on Eleazar, and Aaron dies on the mountain. Israel then mourned Aaron for 30 days. Chapter 21 begins with a Canaanite king attacking Israel and taking some captives. Adonai gives them into Israel's hand, and the city is devoted to destruction. Next, the people again complain. And the people spoke against God and against Moses. "Why have you brought us out of Egypt to die in the wilderness? for there is no food and no water, and we loathe this worthless food. Numbers 21, verse 5. This incites Adonai to send fiery serpents, poisonous snakes, that bit and killed many of the people. The cloud of glory that surrounded the camp of Israel protected them from many things in the desert. But when the people rebelled, that protection was sometimes pulled back a little, like in this case with the serpents. The people cry out and repent, so Adonai has Moses craft a bronze serpent on a pole, that if a person is bitten and looks upon it, he will be healed. This is, of course, why the medical field has a serpent on a pole as the symbol of the healing profession. Israel then traveled through many stops until they came to the land of the Amorites and their king, King Sihon. Israel asked for passage, but the Amorites came out against them in battle. Adonai gives the Amorites into Israel's hand, and Israel settled in their villages and their cities. Then they turned to Bashan and King Og. Og also came out in battle, and again Adonai gave them over to Israel, and Israel took possession of the land. And the portion ends with, Then the people of Israel set out and camped in the plains of Moab, beyond the Jordan at Jericho. Numbers 22, verse 1. This brings us to our Haftarah this week and back to the book of Judges. Judges 11, verses 1 through 33. To set the stage, Israel has again slipped back into idolatry, and Adonai lifted his protection, which allowed the Ammonites and the Philistines to oppress them for 18 years. The people cried out and repented and put away all their foreign gods to serve Adonai. The people said, Whoever can fight against the Ammonites shall be the leader of Gilead. Gilead was in the Transjordan territory of Reuben, which was where the heaviest of the oppression was. Now Jephthah, the Gileadite, was a mighty warrior, but he was the son of a prostitute. Gilead was the father of Jephthah, and Gilead's wife also bore him sons. And when his sons grew up, they drove Jephthah out and said to him, You shall not have an inheritance in our father's house, for you are the son of another woman. Judges 11, verses 1 and 2. Yiftach, which is Jephthah, is the son of Gilead, but not the son of Gilead's wife. My translation says that he was the son of a prostitute. And that is the most common translation of the Hebrew, but it can also be translated as strange woman. The sages have many interpretations of this, from harlot to concubine to someone from another tribe. But his half-brothers didn't feel that he was qualified to receive inheritance in the family, so he was outcast and driven away. Then Jephthah fled from his brothers and lived in the land of Tov, and worthless fellows collected around Jephthah and went out with him. Verse 3. The land of Tov is thought to be a non-Israelite city, and the term worthless men means empty or vain in Hebrew. We would probably say that they were worldly, not concerned about spiritual matters. After a time, the Ammonites made war against Israel, and when the Ammonites made war against Israel, the elders of Gilead went to bring Jephthah from the land of Tov. And they said to Jephthah, Come and be our leader, that we may fight against the Ammonites. Verses 4 through 6. The elders of Gilead, out of desperation for a warrior leader, sought out Yiftach. They offered him to come and be their leader. The Hebrew word used here is understood to be a chief or a commander, or a captain, if you will. But Jephthah said to the elders of Gilead, Did you not hate me and drive me out of my father's house? Why have you come to me now when you are in distress? And the elders of Gilead said to Jephthah, That is why we have turned to you now, that you may go with us and fight against the Ammonites and be our head over all the inhabitants of Gilead. Verses 7 and 8. After initially rejecting the offer, the elders sweetened the pot by offering him to be the leader of Gilead if he is successful in defeating the Ammonites. Jephthah said to the elders of Gilead, "If you bring me home again to fight against the Ammonites, and Yod-heh-vaveh gives them over to me, I will be your head." And the elders of Gilead said to Jephthah, "Yod-heh-vaveh will be witness between us, if we do not do as you say." So Jephthah went with the elders of Gilead, and the people made him head and leader over them. And Jephthah spoke all his words before Yod-heh-vaveh at Mizpah. Verses 9 through 11. Yiftach agrees and is made leader over the people of Gilead, and they make an oath before Adonai. Then Jephthah sent messengers to the king of the Ammonites and said, "What do you have against me, that you have come to me to fight against my land?" And the king of the Ammonites answered the messengers of Jephthah, "Because Israel, on coming up from Egypt, took away my land, from the Arnon to the Jabbok, and to the Jordan. Now therefore restore it peaceably." Verses 12 and 13. Yiftach's initial action is not war. His initial action was to see if he could reach an understanding with Ammon and avoid war if possible. Jephthah again sent messengers to the king of the Ammonites and said to him, "Thus says Jephthah, Israel did not take away the land of Moab or the land of the Ammonites. But when they came up from Egypt, Israel went through the wilderness to the Red Sea and came to Kadesh. Israel then sent messengers to the king of Edom, saying, "Please let us pass through your land." But the king of Edom would not listen. And they said also to the king of Moab, but he would not consent. So Israel remained at Kadesh. Then they journeyed through the wilderness and went around the land of Edom and around the land of Moab, and arrived on the east side of the land of Moab, and camped on the other side of the Arnon. But they did not enter the territory of Moab, for the Arnon was the boundary of Moab. Verses 14 through 18. Yiftach begins his refute with the Ammonites' claim that Israel took away their land by showing that even though they requested to pass through the lands of Edom and Moab on their journey, when they were refused, they went around those lands rather than try to take them by force. Israel then sent messengers to Sihon, king of the Amorites, king of Heshbon, and Israel said to him, "Please let us pass through your land to our country." But Sihon did not trust Israel to pass through his territory. So Sihon gathered all his people together and encamped at Jahaz and fought with Israel. And Yod-heh-vaveh, the God of Israel, gave Sihon and all his people into the hand of Israel, and they defeated them. So Israel took possession of all the land of the Amorites, and inhabited that country. And they took possession of all the territory of the Amorites, from the Arnon to the Jabbok, and from the wilderness to the Jordan. Verses 19 through 22. Here Yiftach shows King Sihon came out in aggression against Israel, and was defeated in battle. So Israel took possession of the land that Ammon was now trying to claim. This is also the tie-in to our Torah portion, in recounting the conquering of King Sihon and of the Amorites, as well as dealing with Edom and Moab. So then, Yod-heh-vaveh, the God of Israel, dispossessed the Amorites from before his people Israel. And are you to take possession of them? Will you not possess what Chemosh, your God, gives you to possess? And all that Yod-heh-vaveh, our God, has dispossessed before us, we will possess. Verses 23 and 24. Yiftach is stating that as the Ammonites' God gave them land to possess, and Adonai gave Israel land to possess, what right do they have to try to take the land that Yod-heh-vaveh gave to Israel? Now, are you any better than Balak, the son of Zippor, king of Moab? Did he ever contend against Israel, or did he ever go to war with them? While Israel lived in Heshbon and its villages, and the Aror and its villages, and in all the cities that are on the banks of the Arnon, 300 years, why did you not deliver them within that time? I therefore have not sinned against you, and you do me wrong by making war on me. Yod-heh-vaveh, the judge, decide this day between the people of Israel and the people of Ammon. But the king of the Ammonites did not listen to the words of Jephthah that he sent to him. Verses 25 through 28. Yiftach's final argument was that King Balak never tried to fight Israel in battle, and that even though they had been settled in the land they are now contending for 300 years, how come now it's an issue? Why hasn't it been an issue over the last 300 years? He settles his case that the Ammonites are in the wrong, and Israel is in the right. Then the spirit of Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh was upon Jephthah, and he passed through Gilead and Manasseh, and passed on Mizpah of Gilead. And from Mizpah of Gilead he passed on to the Ammonites. And Jephthah made a vow to Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, and said, "If you will give the Ammonites into my hand, then whatever comes out from the doors of my house to meet me when I return in peace from the Ammonites shall be Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh's, and I will offer it up for a burnt offering." So Jephthah crossed over to the Ammonites and fought to fight against them, and Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh gave them into his hand. And he struck them from the Aror to the neighborhood of the Menith, 20 cities, as far as the Abel Keramim, with a great blow. So the Ammonites were subdued before the people of Israel. Verses 29 through 33. Yiftach makes a vow to Adonai that he will sacrifice whatever comes out of his house if he is given victory over the Ammonites. Adonai gives Yiftach the victory, and that's where our Haftarah ends, but not the story. Even though we are complete with the Haftarah, most people are more concerned about what happens next, after his vow to the victory. When Yiftach returns home, his daughter, who is his only child, is the first one to come out of their house to greet him. This greatly grieves him because of the vow that he made to Adonai to sacrifice whatever came out of his house first to greet him. His daughter tells him that he should keep his vow, as Adonai gave him victory over the Ammonites. His daughter is sent off for 2 months to be with her friends, and when she returns, the text says that he carried out the vow, and that she never knew a man. The sages are very split on what this actually happened, or what could have happened to her. First off, vow or no vow, there is no acceptable kosher way to sacrifice a human being. Full stop. The first option, and most likely option, would be that she would be redeemed for her valuation price, which would have been given to the priesthood. And we covered this in the end of Leviticus in chapter 27. So, redeem her for money. Seeing how the text is written, though, it doesn't appear that Yiftach did this. Why not is a mystery, and could probably only be chalked up to complete ignorance of what the Torah says. Another option would be that she would remain celibate for her whole life and be dedicated to the Holy One in prayer and good works. This seems like it may have happened, as the text actually points out that she never knew a man. So if she was actually sacrificed, it doesn't seem likely. Why would you make that comment? And of course, the third option is that she was somehow sacrificed, as unkosher as that would have been. Yeshua is the only one who came in human form that was and will ever be an acceptable sacrifice, one which was done on the heavenly altar in a spiritual realm, not the earthly one. Our words have power to kill and to make alive. This again reminds us to be very careful with our words and not to make vows unless absolutely necessary. So we should study Torah to know how to walk, and simply let our yes be yes and our no be no. I pray this teaching has been edifying. Let's lift up the name of the Holy One. With love, in Echad, Shalom.